Recording in.
Welcome everyone for our pre-conference lecture on the concept of first voices, and we are going to be learning with Dr. Fyre Jean Graveline. So incredibly excited and grateful to have her with us and to have you all joining us. But let us first begin as we prepare for a land acknowledgement to ground ourselves in gratitude. So just take a few moments right now, wherever you are joining us from Turtle Island or presumably from here in beautiful unceded Mi'kmaq, and just think about where you feel most connected to the land. So perhaps it's the beach, perhaps it's a mountain, perhaps it's a hiking trail or park or your garden. But just take a moment to feel connected to the land, to feel that deep gratitude. And as I prepare to do a land acknowledgement, you might want to share in the chat what you are grateful for. So perhaps it's the beautiful ocean and the waves that help you regulate yourself, or perhaps it's the breeze, or for example, I live in Unama'ki, which is the land of the fog, and I have never felt so deeply in love with fog until I moved here, and to see it rising from the water, it has been a deeply spiritual way to connect to this land and to the name of this land. So that's my way of sharing. I invite you to use the chat to share and think, but just first take a few moments to take a deep breath and connect. And as I join the land acknowledgement and you share what you are grateful for, please also use the correct Indigenous name as opposed to the colonial name for where you are joining. You can see on the bottom right, it says placenames.mapdev.ca. And that's a wonderful resource for you to know how to pronounce where you are, or if you don't know the specific and correct Indigenous name for where you are joining from. So for example, if you are in what is colonially known as Halifax, Nova Scotia, you would say, I'm joining you from Kijipuktuk. So I would like to begin by acknowledging that I am speaking from Unama'ki, which is located on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, whose inherent rights were recognized in the peace and friendship treaties that were signed with the Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, and Passamaquoddy peoples from 1725 to 1779. This series of treaties did not surrender Indigenous land, resources, or sovereignty to the British Empire, but instead established rules for an ongoing relationship between nations. The treaties were later reaffirmed by Canada in Section 35 of the Constitution Act in 1982. They remain active to this day. Let us take this time to pause in reflection and gratitude for the land where we live and work. And when we acknowledge the land, we must also begin to acknowledge the wisdom of this planet and align ourselves with its truths. So we pause in gratitude. And let us also pause in gratitude for all who have and continue to heroically care and advocate for this beautiful land, for this beautiful planet. May we join them in this sacred work. Let us ground ourselves in the wisdom of the land-based Mi'kmaq teachings and values we must all begin to learn. Let us work to decolonize ourselves, our practice, and this community that we share, by working for justice for all living beings as an expression of our gratitude for being here. Let us take a deep breath and recenter ourselves away from the violent ways colonization fills our world and fills us. Let us take a deep breath and work on letting go of the unconscious bias that is everywhere, inside and out. May our session today lead us to be in right relationship with this land and with one another. Mm-hmm. We are all treaty people. So how does this impact what we do and how we do it? And how will it guide our work together today? We think especially about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, and those include specific recommendations and calls to action around child welfare, education, language and culture, health, justice, and reconciliation. And we think about what that means for each of us and the work that we do. the Nova Scotia College of Social Workers commits to translating this acknowledgement into action by seeking to implement the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. We commit to doing what we can to becoming better treaty partners. We commit to learning and to unlearning. We are in the process of learning to become safer as social workers and as people, recognizing the interconnections of violence and all of the systemic forms of oppression that are part of colonization. And we recognize that this is part of our new code of ethics that the Canadian Association of Social Workers just launched this year, that requires us to shift from the illusion of neutrality to actively becoming anti-racist and fighting against racism and all intersectional prejudice that is part of colonization. And we recognize that it's a journey that goes from not recognizing racism exists to a future that we don't yet even know or begin to understand. And that the process of learning and growing into a safer future and of decolonizing ourselves requires recognizing the fear, the shame, and the discomfort that comes from talking about our own unconscious bias, our own mistakes and imperfection in part of our quest for safer social work practice. And this requires an attention to intersectionality and the ways in which all forms of oppression are intertwined and in our own brains and minds and hearts and beings. And we think of Dr. Michael Yellowbird, who talks about neurodecolonization and the ways in which our unique positionality and identity informs how we think and perceive the world and function. So decolonizing ourselves in our practice means recognizing the ways in which we are each impacted by the colonial system in which we all participate and from which those of us of settler descent continue to benefit. Each of us, depending upon our social location and intersectional positionality, are uniquely impacted or oppressed. For example, those of us from African descent were dispossessed and uprooted from their land and brought to Turtle Island against their will as part of the white supremacy and slave trade that fueled the settlement of this continent. We take this moment to reflect upon the unique impact of colonization upon each of us in our practice. And this is part of what we are hoping to continue to discuss at our annual conference that is going to be held in 2 weeks' time. Today is the last day to register if you want to be at one of the regional hubs, but it will be also available virtual. It's going to be hybrid. So if you're joining us virtual, you have another couple of weeks to finalize your registration. But today's conference, today's lecture is going to help us begin to prepare for the conversations that we are going to be having as we think and reflect on First Voices and what that means. And so without any further ado, I'm so grateful to introduce to you Dr. Fyre Jean Graveline, whose brilliance and leadership in social work and on our planet has been deeply appreciated. Many of you may remember she led the Flower Power meditation a few months ago. I know for myself, it was truly transformative, and I'm so excited to learn from her. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, gratitude to you, Nash, for your invitation to be with you all today. I just want to express my gratitude and the honor that it is to be present with the community today to share some of my knowledge and wisdom that I've gleaned over the last, just recognizing 30 years of work that brought my PhD into existence, where I first started thinking about and developing the language of first voice. And of course, many years have passed since doing that work. And so I'm just grateful to be in this place to present to you today. I would say from my own first voice, I originate from northern bush country in northern Manitoba, along the North Saskatchewan River, in the unceded territories of the Apasquiac First Nation. My parents are both Michif. My mother, Olive Therese Belfour from Duck Lake, Saskatchewan, and my father, Norbert Maurice Graveline, from Saint Laurent. And so I bring from within my own embodied and ancestral wisdom the knowledges of those ancestors who were resilient and resisted and came forward with a deep respect and understanding for Mother Earth, for the power of our life givers to be respectful and responsible and reciprocal in our relations with each other. And so I'm speaking from that place today. I'm going to share historically a little of the early work of First Voice, and then journey through into the work that I'm doing now, which evolved from my first questioning around First Voice, I think came from my childhood and being in mission school and wondering why some people got to be bosses and bossy and experts, and why some people were supposed to listen and learn and never have an opinion or never have a voice, and experienced a lot of mutedness myself in my life. And so it became very important for me to figure out, how do I find my voice? And if I do find it, what is the purpose of sharing it? And what can be accomplished or achieved in the sharing? I also speak today as a two-spirited individual. And so I'm just grateful for the grandmothers, and we like to travel in a pack or a herd, and I'll get to that later in the presentation, but just want to express grateful for the gratitude for the supporters that I see in the chat and know are here just to be with me in this sharing today. So I want to open, many of you are familiar with the early work on First Voice, which of course published in Circle Works many years ago, 98, which is from my PhD at Dalhousie. But I do want to open in the next incarnation first, which was in the Healing Wounded Hearts, which is actually my first voice spoken. It's a biography, thinly disguised, I like to say, as nonfiction, created nonfiction. And I just want to read from a chapter called Honesty is a Doorway, just to set the stage for the rest of the work today. And of course, I've edited it a little bit to be more reflective of my ways of speaking today. We story art to know, to tell, to ask. Whose voice gets heard in life, homes, sessions, agencies, parliament, pulpits, media, society, classrooms, an ongoing political struggle. My voice has often been unheard throughout years of life, of university, in practice settings. We continue to grow, to speak my truth, to share my art and my stories. As I age, I get stronger in my words, stronger in my art, in my conviction. I will not remain silenced anymore. No more. Now, as a Métis grandmother, two-spirit, feminist, mother, healer, scholar, activist, artist, heartivist. I art and story. I use my first voice to bring together my life and work, my life work, within and against Eurocentric patriarchal contexts. Have you noticed? My story is highly contradictory, very personal, ultimately political. It is in these contradictions that I exist, that we all exist on an hourly, daily, minute by minute basis, intergenerationally. These contradictions inform my art, my voice, my first voice, voice of experience I share with you today. Angaangaq elders teach, don't talk about what you don't know. We all have a story to tell. We all have a story to tell. We continuously learn in Eurocentric settings. Not all voices, not all stories have healing medicine. Not all speakers are rooted. Differences in consciousness, history, different experiences of mutedness, of voicelessness, of voicefulness exist. So I'm going to share with you a slideshow of my art and poetic inquiry of the current work that I'm working on, which is all emerges from circle works and from my own first voice and my own lived experience. And I'm just going to move through it as much as I can. I'm just going to share screen now. So that's just a title page for us. And the current work that I'm involved in, arising from my first voice and my lived experience, I'm framing as life as medicine, lived, Indigenous, feminist, ecological. And here is an eco-bricolage. Thank you, Naj, for your lovely opening blessing. And this is my form of blessing for us today. We begin with ancient symbol, circle, hoop of life, entwined from last year's grapevine, already laying on ground, lined with moss, grandfather's beard, blown out of ancient firs in last big wind. We gently place 7 stones for 7 sacred directions, 7 sacred teachings, smooth, white, precious snow crystal, prayerfully harvested from sacred beach nearby, adorned with 7 pine cones, shaken by wind out of neighboring trees, found on roadside in our early morning walk by water. Later that day, scavenging in garden bed, echinacea seed pods offer themselves. We offer, in gratitude, a pinch of hand-harvested willow bark, our ancestors' tobacco, and a drop of maple syrup, ancient cure-all, calling forth sweetness for all. Cozy nest is installed on tall stump with red ochre rock by pond. We are complete. Not completely safe, but safe enough for now. May we all be safe enough in this space for now. So this work all began with the medicine wheel, which early on I arted based on my father's version, which he shared with a stick on the dirt of this wheel here. And it has evolved. I'm not going to share in depth today the various evolutions, but just to share that it is now evolving into life as medicine. And that's what we will be exploring today, is respecting our right to be, to believe, to belong, and to become one. And how is First Voice interwoven in each of those areas? Here I am. It hurts to see. Pain ricochets within and behind my eyes. I will paint my pain. I examine in a mirror. I want the real thing. How do eyes, pain, look? Green on white, on yellow, on green, brown dots. Now for red lines, like some kind of ancient writing, like red willow branching, healing medicine poured on rocks, in eyes, in healing sweat. My hands move like the ancients, trying to spell out my pain. Release. My eyes need to release pain. More red underline, more water for blood to flow. Yes, look, it hurts to see. I am mad, and I am sad, and I am afraid, and I'm crying. Just another opening in the muck. Life can be like an oil spill. Messy, stinky, keeps seeping long after the cleanup crew has all gone home. Wait, look, see. Millions of tiny fairy lights. Gratitude to all who are voicing, all who are listening, all who are holding hope. So we begin in the eastern door with lived experience, walking our talk. Lived experience refers to acknowledging and valuing our embodiment, what we live through, sense and store through our bodies, including intergenerational, ancestral, or blood memory. Our lived experiences are communicated through languages, arts, stories, and cultures, and through First Voice. We share what wisdom we have gleaned from what we have lived, also known as what we know. Lived experience is not only individual, internal, or embodied. We know and experience and express in relation to our life worlds, communities, societies, cultures, environments. This has been referred to by many theorists and by multiple terms: being in the world by language, self in relation by myself, and more currently, relationality. First Voice is shaped within multiple relationalities and intersectionalities. All social change requires an intersectional collective focus. Through First Voice, we can grow to recognize our social locatedness and learn to mediate all traumas as socially produced. We heal by speaking our truth and listening respectfully and responsibly. And of course, back in the 80s and 90s, we were just beginning to unveil oppression. And I was facilitating here in Mi'kma'ki and around Canada and the world, the cage of oppression, which is a sociodrama. Still love to do it at least one more time and video it. So when we're talking about oppression, we are naming the interlocking systems of power plus privilege that structurally, so when we talk structurally, economically, socially, culturally, religiously, and politically, produce, reproduce, and rationalize unequal access for many and privilege for a few. And I want to read just a little excerpt out of Circle Works, out of the chapter, First Voice as Critical Pedagogy. So remember, I was writing this in the 90s. We first voices are embodied teachers, healers. We are artifacts on display. All eyes on, we teach, we heal with our experiences, with our voices, our heartfelt voices, with our lives. Reaching inside our everyday lived experiences, we gift our voice of experience, pain, loss, anger, strength to heal, cost of resistance, and always resilience. First voice cries out, screams out, sorrow lodges in our hearts, anger pumps through our veins, resistance inspires us, tickles our funny bone, awakens our conscience, enlightens our consciousness. Whether we speak them to your ears or enter your eyes from a page or an image, our words, we want them to echo in your brain. Listen, what can be learned through our images, our stories, our first voice? Oh, when we center lived experience, first voice, political, personal, social, emotional, spiritual, embodied, relational, structural, and ecological, we engage in radical activism within dominant and still dominating what is now named world ecology, which we know is Eurocentric, patriarchal, heteronormative, hyper-individualistic, mechanistic, scientific, objective, depersonalizing, oppressive, capitalist, exploitive, and extractive. And that is not the entire list, but I'll go with that for now. Speaking of hyper-individualism, psychology, which is the backbone of all therapies, gives minimal thought to the political loadedness of its subject matter, and therefore acts to privatize suffering that has social origins, declares Andy Fisher, well-known radical settler, elder eco-psychologist in 2019. The profession of psychology in Canada developed in the same political climate and colonial context that gave rise to the residential school system and participated in the process of cultural genocide. The profession of psychology, in its interaction with Indigenous peoples in Canada, has contravened its own code of ethics, admits the Canadian Psychology Association in response to the TRC in 2018. I am glad to see the recent material of the Canadian Association of Social Workers, because we are very grounded in psychology, and the same could be said for us as a profession. Still in the Eastern Door, here's our practice strategy, which is re-enlivening our essence, respecting our voices and our resistances, honoring our right to be, to exist. And this is one of my many art pieces on honoring my right to exist. Warrior me. 3 faces, Joker, warrior, sad sack. It is possible to fall apart and come back together again. Here's a response art I did right after supporting the Ascazoni when all the suicides happened. I think it was 2009. Just reach out. Don't know who I am. Don't know where I come from. Who cares where I'm going? Who cares whether I live or die? We care. Just reach out. Come home. And this is also very relevant now for the 60 scoop that we're work that we're just heading into doing with Life as Medicine. First voice can empower us to resist extermination. Here's one I did in response to the brutal loss of a community member here, Ratea, a modern superhero. She battled bullies face-to-face and in cyberspace. Many of you followed the Be the Change art show and her mom's heroic activities to get cyberbullying illegal in Nova Scotia. Cutting for Kath. This is response art also. These are all related to youth response art. Paper mache on hardboard with acrylic. See, she says, all my scars are old. I don't cut now since I see you. I weep to think of the thin lines of blood, life seeping from her young, warm brown skin. I create this piece to help me and her remember. See, I say, layers dried, cracked open, without any blade. You do not have to cut, to give, or to get. Just to say we need to save our youth. They are our descendants and our hope for the future. They must feel loved and wanted and welcomed, and that there is hope for their future. So moving to the south door, we are not alone. Brown Thunderbird woman, miraculously, in the midst of complex conflicts, problems I face in my daily life, she appears as a guide. She reminds me what I know and need to know. I am so overwhelmed with her. I cannot understand or communicate in words. How can I express the enormity of her presence? When we talk about Indigenous lives and first voice, we immediately have to acknowledge the intergenerational harm. And these are two pieces that I created when I was working on the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission as a therapist, and also with the rollout of the settlement here in Mi'kma'ki. And of course, there is much rage in our communities. There have been many lies told, over colonization, and we have entitlement to our righteous rage. I like to think of it as outrageous and courageous that we speak our truth, and that sometimes really does require rage. So our strategy in this doorway is reigniting collective resurgence. We can heal intergenerational silencing, erasure, soul wounding through first voice, through expressing and enacting our right to believe. I have worked for many years with Sharing Circle, truthfully speaking and heartfully listening. These have helped me immensely in coming into my first voice and in being able to be present for the first voices of other community members. In circle, we learn to be present, to presence, to open our hearts to our own beingness, to all beings, experiences, understandings, feelings, intelligences, and wisdoms. To really feel, voice, and hear the depth of feelings and meanings lived. To experience really being seen, held, and witnessed. We learn to suspend judgment, criticism, questioning of our relations. And learn how not to put our own experiences and our own feelings onto our relatives. To speak in sharing circle is part of a collective healing process. We are learning to connect with our lived experience, to speak in our own first voice, to connect to our embodiment, what we have lived, experienced, and or witnessed, and to share from the depths of our hearts in alignment with our spirits, our ancestors, and our guides. We trust that what we will need to say will flow through us when it is our turn. Teachings on the powerful gifts of tears and laughter are always welcomed offerings. I offer one of my blueberry pours, an art technique I developed through COVID. This is day 11 of lockdown, and what arrived is we are one. All four in coffee first, outlined with dark blueberry, looping in and back, infinity, say some. Métis flag for my relatives, symbol of our resilience, never-ending resistance, resurgence. Our ancestors say, be proud to be Métis. Breathe in on one loop, breathe out on the other. Relax. Whoops. Now turned around, hung upside down. See grandmothers dancing? All at once, we understand. We are one. Collective resurgence is required. So this is an illustration of how our ancestors can speak to us through our first voice. Turning to the West door, feminist, the personal is political. The movement to end violence against Indigenous women, against women, is generations old. And this is one piece from an early large wall mural we did in Winnipeg, I think at the art gallery or somewhere downtown in the early days of the Stolen Sisters before the MMIWI happened. This piece was done up when I worked on the Highway of Tears up in northern BC for all sisters now in the spirit world. Black and blue on plywood, globs of gloopy red, watered for blood tears shed by all. We are praying for passage, safe passage to the spirit world. Dance in peace with ancestors on Northern Lights. And here I'm thinking from my teenagehood of Helen Betty Osborne, brutally murdered in my community. Many of you know her name. And I'm also thinking right now in my art is breaking for my stepdaughter, Sherry Lynn Sabatis, just buried last week, murdered in her community of Oromocto. And my granddaughter, Jade Marie, from 2017, murdered and missing, also Oromocto First Nation. For all girls and women, all two spirits, including myself, who lost our joy, our voices, our will to live, and some our lives to gender-based violence. Rape was and is a long-standing oppressive colonial war tactic. Free at last. Our strategy in this doorway, restoring reciprocal relationality. We can heal our wounded hearts through first voice, speak out, express our right to be safe enough, our right to belong, to live in harmony. And this piece was from the time I was working with a lot of domestic violence, still am. It's pandemic now here in Nova Scotia, well, pre-COVID, but certainly during and since. And this piece is strength and love for all those still trapped in violent relationships, and a big hurrah for those that make it out alive and full of life. And I dedicate this to Angelique Lynn LaValle, who we supported through her court case in Manitoba in the 80s to have the battered wife syndrome declared a legal defense. We can show up, speak out, speak up, speak truth to power. No silence while our sisters, daughters, granddaughters, all our relations suffer, are silenced, minimized, marginalized, extracted, and exterminated. We can show up at events like Walking with Our Sisters. This was at Mount St. Vincent University, Halifax in 2017. And there we are with close to 2,000 pairs of moccasin vamps, recognizing and honoring the lives of hundreds, I say thousands, of murdered and missing Indigenous women in Canada, and thousands of children that died in Indian residential schools. This was conceived by Michif beadwork artist Christy Belcourt in 2012 and started moving around Canada in 2014. And we were privileged and honored to be invited to the closing ceremonies at Batoche in August of 2017 with Elder Maria Campbell and many, many others. Many or some resist the language of the F word, feminism, to describe Indigenous women's struggles or to describe our gendered struggles that still exist. We embrace rematriation as Indigenous feminist praxis. We acknowledge differential impacts of colonization on Indigenous women and men, on two-spirited and transgendered. We know colonial imposed systems of male domination continue to exert much influence in political, economic, social, and ceremonial spheres. A few examples: grandmothers and two-spirited have been displaced from our rightful roles. Violence against women, children, and two-spirits is pandemic. Our earth-based matricentric teachings and ceremonies have been evilized and erased. We continuously give voice to interconnections between the personal and the political, acknowledging links between suffering, extracting of women's bodies and labor, and using and abusing Earth Mother. Femicide and ecocide and genocide are all connected. We name, shame, and blame patriarchal, capitalistic, colonial attitudes, systems, and structures that continuously define, refine, and confine us all. You can see that was written for poetic dub delivery. We resist patriarchal Eurocentric language like client and therapist, and welcome egalitarian and respectful processes where we are all co-creators, healing and transforming together. We restore respectful, reciprocal relationality, voice our right to be safe enough, to live in harmony, to belong. We welcome. We become empowered to be social activists in collective movements. We voice to end violence against all beings, women, children, Two-Spirit, and Earth Mother. Moving to the North Door, ecological. We are Earth. And this is balancing woman, balancing between the dark and the light, the night and the day, death and birth. An image of interdependence, of, in this case, my lived experience growing up in the bush, being bush Métis, the importance of the trees, the swamps, the lakes, and the wolves. Or in this case, it also could be the sled dogs or the trap line. Ecological oneness. We restore ecological oneness with our first voices. We can show up, stand up, speak up for and with Mother Earth. We can honor interdependence, our right to become one with her. I could read a poetic inquiry here, but I think I'm running short of time. Mother Earth bleeds, rolling beautiful blue-green calms after witnessing images of devastating aftermath, giant wind, rainstorms sweeping south, people buried, trees uprooted, homes crushed. Earth Mother cries out from far, far away. I am a helpless voyeur, so I am painting sadness, fears. I know upheaval I am experiencing is only a small part of Earth changes, Earth catastrophe. I blot red, bleed red, let red run down, let Mother release her pain. Our bodies come from Earth Mother. We are nourished from her breast. What befalls her befalls us. She provides life, death, and rebirth. Who speaks for Mother Earth? Here I am as a protester dolly, a body tracing on recycled cardboard, poised to defend, protect Earth Mother. Here we are, wounded, but still standing, in idle no more. Her reverse side is also painted, anatomically human insides, with the Declaration of Interdependence by David Suzuki on the outer edge. We are one brief generation in the long march of time. The future is not ours to erase. What are we doing for time? Can't tell. So these are two images that I created when I was part of Extinction Rebellion. And I would love to play Uncle's soundtrack here, if that's possible, Manish.
Absolutely. I'm going to see if I've never done this before. I'm going to see if no, I have to stop screen sharing so that I can play the sound.
Okay, well, maybe let's play it at the end then.
Okay.
Yeah.
And don't worry about time because this is being recorded, so it'll be available. So
it sounds like it's playing. Let's play it if it's playing. Yeah.
I don't know that it's playing.
Oh, I thought I heard the opening sound of it.
No.
Okay. All right. My imagination. All right, let's move on. So as we engage in activism and being the voice of Mother Earth and listening to her voice, the first voice of Mother Earth, the trees, the animals, the plants, as our ancestors did. You know, we can have many, many different feelings that rest in our bodies as a result of really paying attention to what's going on with climate catastrophe and extractivism and all of the harm being done. And so these are just my way of getting it out of my body. Here's what I did right after an Extinction Rebellion march, the last one that we had, the last major protest, where we had 10,000 people in downtown Halifax and millions of people worldwide protesting. And then we were all shut down with COVID. And Greta Thunberg was very big then, and the youth were stepping up with Fridays for Future. And one of the protest signs and symbols was, "There is no planet B." And so that's the title of this. As far as we know, there is nowhere beyond the earth where we will find environments where unprotected humans can survive. Raising our first voices to disarm institutional power will cost. Challenged authorities will always personalize and problematize any and all social activist efforts. Backlash is always distressful. Fight, 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 flight, freeze, fawn, day after day, after day after day. Embodied stress responses, triggered chronically, without resolution, produces harm, permanent damage, tissue destroyed, blood pressure raised, heart damaged, immune system inhibited, digestive distress, degenerative eye disease. I am speaking first voice. I have been a victim of chronic distress. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn, day after day, after day, after day, generation after generation. We wear our buffalo shields and travel in a herd. There's one of my many pieces working out my own terror. Of course, Trickster Wasegachak has to have a say. Wasegachak is wondering, are we treating First Voices respectfully? How do we know? First, find out your local protocols for inviting community guests to participate. If you are unfamiliar, find out first. Start with your existing network and build relationships. Honor your word. Follow the ancestral law of reciprocity, giving back for what we receive. When asking First Voices to share gifts of knowledge, please be honorable. Bring offerings, honorarium, tobacco, food, cloth, blanket, handmade gift, something for the house, or an exchange of labor. Share as much contextual detail as you can. What is wanted? What are you asking for? How does that fit with what others will be saying and doing? Where and when? Informed consent. Before the date, explore the specific First Voice needs. Will we need someone to accompany us, a driver, a navigator, a translator, tech support? Do we need help to find our way to the space or place? Do we need a reminder call the evening before or the morning of the session? Missing any of these crucial services can prevent some from participating. Adopting ancestral community building practices, like offering a beverage when we first arrive, providing a giveaway and or feast following our sharing, also restores relationality. And most crucially, inviting a group of first voices, our herd, our pack, or encouraging first voices to bring family members or friends from personal networks will establish comfort, especially if time, space, or place is a dominantly settler privileged one. Please, no more tokenizing. Some are wondering about inclusion, diversity, intersectionality. We can continuously look around at our sessions, our studios, our circles, our gatherings, and notice who is showing up and who is not able to be present, who is tuning in and who is turning off. What changes do we need to make in our practices, structures, and policies to welcome and include first voices and experiences of relatives who have been silenced, marginalized, excluded, extracted, and, most crucially, exterminated? We must work and play to create space for all voices to be heard and for provision of support, services, allyship, advocacy, activism to occur without so-called unintentional gaps created by our perceived and or expressed bias. Obvious intersectionalities that can challenge us when implementing inclusive ideals include age, economic disparities, especially houselessness and food insecurity, geographic distance and availability of transportation, lifestyles, racism, cultural and spiritual clashes, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual diverse abilities and capabilities, and gender and sexual heteronormativity, to name a few. So we all want to know, what can we do? Engage all first voices within all times, spaces, and places to empower all beings to create social change. So when we talk about empowering all beings to create social change, what do we mean? We can free our creative potential to express first voice, sharing and witnessing the truths of our beingness. We can understand our immediate experiences through broader, intersectional, intergenerational, collective, ecological lens. We can share our lived knowledges to broaden our understandings of and transformations of ourselves, our relations, and our shared world. We can continuously expand possibilities for questioning all assumptions about ways we and our relations should be, should believe, should belong, and should become. We can learn to question, create, and selectively use aspects of dominant and still dominating patriarchal settler culture, aka two-eyed seeing. We can reimagine and revitalize Indigenous cultural teachings and teachers that support a stronger, rematriated sense of identity and resiliency. We can embrace collectivity and respectful, reciprocal relationality, connecting with and acting for and with our relations based on shared experience. We can enact our interdependence for and with Earth Mother, and all our relations. And this is the power of life as medicine. Lived, re-enliven our right to be Indigenous, reignite resurgence to believe, feminist, to restory our relationality to belong, ecological, re-embody interdependence to become one with Earth Mother. Here is a closing prayer, and it's actually an opening, was my first vision when I was 20. A journey to the Black Hills, a 4-day powwow back in the early 70s. I hiked into the hills to get away, sat atop a butte and visioned interdependence. Buffalo, sunflowers, birds, insects, breezes, all need each other for survival. We can envision a world reconnected to our Indigenous roots, to Earth Mother, harmonious, balanced, free, alive. Respect for all life must be taught to all people. Web of interdependence must be rewoven. Love is the answer when we remember to question. Indigenous elders have always taught us it is spiritual connectedness between and within all that exists that has been one of our greatest weapons, healers, liberators in our battles against genocide. That's a quote from Elder Carrie Charnley. I think she's West Coast Salish, maybe. We all have to start where we are, taking the steps that we can take within our immediate environment. Ripples move through the water once a stone is tossed. I offer congratulations to all of you, to dreamers and healers and makers and innovators and change makers, to those that are forever curious. Congratulations for holding the light. Thank you so much for listening. If you have asks, you'd like us to do something, or offers, you'd like to support our work in some way, please contact us.
Thank you so deeply. We are so incredibly grateful. There's a lot of love that's been flowing at you through hearts and chat with deep gratitude. There may be a few questions, but I'm going to screen share now the recording so that we can end with that as well. So just screen share. Make sure I have it.
I am from the top of the world, in a country called Greenland. And there I live right next to the biggest ice in existence of the Northern Hemisphere. When I was born, just about 74 years ago, on the average, it was up to 5 kilometers thick. And it was right to the very lake where my ancestors come from, where my family had lived for about 6,000 years. And now the thickness of the ice is less than 2 kilometers. I grew up on a small village of 3 houses for the first 12 years of my life. when I was young, I was a runner for the elders. My job was to bring home to Greenland whom I met, what I saw, what I experienced, and what I heard. In 1963, in the month of January, two young men went hunting for caribou. So the elders went hunt in the month of March, and lo and behold, water was coming out on the big ice. It'd been minus 35 Celsius at least for 5 months. That was the first time my people noticed that this phenomenon going on, which we have not known in the living memory. And that little river, which becomes alive in the summertime when the ice is melting, now runs at more than 1 million liters per second. As the ocean rises 1 millimeters, the waves become 10 times bigger. So the trauma goes on and on and on, and one day it will collapse. All of us, all of us, all of us. Her name is Kalaallit, which means an instrument from the great sky. We only have one heartbeat, all of us, all of us. Oh, oh. Oh, oh. Listen. Listen. Then listen more. Only then can you tell a living story.
Ah, well, I don't know if we have spaciousness for questions.
Add spaciousness for questions.
Okay.
That's the beauty of it being recorded.
Mhm.
I see a lot of love coming at you, especially for your artwork and your wisdom, deep gratitude, but I do not see any questions
That's
here.
okay.
So I know that I will personally be meditating upon this. This is going to be sent out to everyone at our conference that is getting ready to. Today is the last day if you want to attend one of the in-person hubs, but it'll be available virtually as well. It's going to be our first hybrid annual conference, and your incredible wisdom, compassion, insight is going to ground everything that we will do to do that deep self-reflection and reconnection. And I can't help but think as we approach what is known as Mother's Day, your understanding of the importance of rematriation for the earth, for our planet, for ourselves, for the ways in which we can begin to heal gender violence, which is everywhere. There was a lot of also in the chat, a lot of love and condolences with your loved ones for the recent losses that you have specifically sustained as a result of gender violence. It is at the core of colonization and which voices are listened to and not. So we are so grateful to you for sharing, helping us hopefully open ourselves, hearing and listening internally and externally until the time comes that we can hear that we only have one heartbeat, all of us, which is what Uncle shared, which was how you want to close our session. And may we come to learn to listen so that we can hear that one heartbeat in each of our lives.
Beautiful. Thanks, Nash.
Deep gratitude to you and yours, and to everyone who's joined us, who stayed a little late. If you are watching this over a YouTube video, please do not hesitate to seek Dr. Fyre Jean Graveline out. Life is Medicine, the beautiful sacred healing work that she and the grandmothers that are joining her are doing to heal. And may we all be part of that deep healing that our planet desperately needs. Gratitude.